Okay, yesterday we left off at the bottom of Lamed Daled and Beis. The Gemara was discussing that we made a Maila. Abaye had a Shaila. This that we have Kedusha from the Kli. This that the object and the Nesachim were put into the Kli is that, or rather this that we said that you're going to be Makdish by Hashaka, when you're going to have the water reattaching itself to the water reattaching itself back to its source. Is that dafka when it's hekdeshin b'kli or hekdeshin b'peh? So the Gemara said there was a maila. There was a maila of hekdeshin b'kli, or there's a maila by kochim that even if it's hekdeshin b'peh, the halacha is going to be that once it's kodesh, it can't be reattached to its source. So Rav is going to bring proof. The next Gemara is 3 proofs that we made a Milo by Hekdesh, and therefore we can prove that maybe we made a Milo by Truma too, talking about our branches of Truma that we are going to replant in the ground, that was the Shaila Naman Aleph. The halach is it's Asurim, going to be Asurim Lazarim. It's still going to be Asur to a Zar, for a Zar to eat it because of Hesach Hadas, but there was a Milo we made by Truma. So Amar Rava Afanana Mitanina. Second to last line. Amar Rava Afanana Mitanina. V'nasan olav mayim chayim el keli. This is a pasuk that's found by Paraduma. The Torah tells us that we have to take the water that's going to be used for the Paraduma has to be taken from a running well. V'nasan olav mayim chayim el keli. Should place mayim chayim. Mayim chayim is a reference to running water, live water, El Kelly into the Kli. So the Gemara makes a drasha shetehei chiyusan b'Kli, that the action of its putting into the Kli should be done directly from its life source, which means the Kli, the vessel which you're going to use for the Paraduma, has to be the Kli that you're going to draw the water from. Shetehei chiyusan b'Kli, the actual life of the wellspring is going to take place in the Kli, which means the drawing of the water that you are going to be using for your Paraduma should be drawn with that Kli. That's the drasha. But also, the Torah tells us, V'nasan. V'nasan is a lashon of you can place, which means that if it's being placed there, it doesn't mean that it had to be drawn with that Kli. V'nasan can also mean it's being placed by another vessel into this vessel. So 2 conflicting thoughts that are coming from the pasuk. Number 1, the Torah tells us Mayim Chayim El Keli, which the Gemara makes a drasha shtei chiyusan b'Kli, that it's taking place in the Kli. The chiyus, the life of the water, is taking place in the Kli, which means that you're drawing the water in this Kli. And also it says V'nasan, that you can go ahead and place it. Alma Telusha Ninu. Telusha means it's detached. So the Gemara is saying, which one is it? V'hamechubar Ninu. But you just told me that it has to be attached to the ground. Telushin is detached, mechubarin is attached. So which one is it? Do you have to go ahead and use the kli that you're going to sprinkle the paraduma, that you're going to place the ashes of the paraduma? Is that the kli that you have to draw the water from? Or can you take it from another vessel and pour it into this vessel? 2 conflicting thoughts from the pasuk. Ella, how are you going to answer it out? Maila. Hachanami Maila. Ella Maila, let's see the top Rashi. Ella Maila, but Ella Maila bi almahu midirabanan shtei chiyusan b'kli. Really, midaoraisa, you do not have to draw the water from this kli. It's a Maila midirabanan shtei chiyusan b'kli that will be drawn from the kli. The Gemara makes a drasha from the pasuk. But how are you going to explain that? Vasmechu rabbanan akra. Really, it's a din derabanan. It's a din derabanan that it should be drawn from this kli, and the rabbanan go ahead and use the play on words from the pasuk to go ahead and teach us this halacha that should be shtei chiyusan b'kli. But really, it's only a maila. It's only a higher level to have the drawing from the kli. Really, it could be placed from another vessel into this kli. If that's the case, if you see there's a maila over here by Paraduma, hachanama maila bi'amahu. So too over here by Truma, when you replanted those branches of Truma into the ground, and we said, Taharim milatame, it is tahar, but it's still asur. Maila be'amahu de'in zril l'truma of asur milechel. It's a maila. It's a higher level. It's a higher level of kedusha by truma that the zuriya, the replanting of the truma, still makes it asur in milechel, asur for a zar to eat. That's the Gemara's raya. Amar Rav Simi bar Ashi, another raya. Afanana mitanim. We'll also learn to the Brayso. Taval v'ala. If a person goes to the mikvah, a person was tummy. He went to the mikvah. He got up. He came up from the mikvah. Ochel b'maiser. Once he comes up from the mikvah, he's considered a full yom. The halacha is he's able to eat maiser. Herav shimsho. Let's say when the night falls, at nightfall at shkia. Ochel b'truma. Then he's already allowed to eat truma. So the Gemara says b'truma in, b'kachim lo. Dafka truma he has the ability to eat, but kachim he doesn't have the ability to eat. So the Gemara asks, why not? Am I taru? Why isn't he able to eat kachim? He's tar. Ela maila. Must be that we made a maila by kachim that even though he's tar, he's still not allowed to eat kachim until he goes ahead and brings a carbon. Hachanama maila. If you see that there's a maila by kachim, so too by truma by us. When you replanted your truma, you can say that there was a maila that we did not allow you to eat your truma. Amar Rav Ashi, afanana mitanina. Another raya of a maila. Ve'habasa. The Torah here is referring to a person who becomes tamei, the basa, the meat of an animal which becomes tamei, that you're not allowed to eat. Ve'habasa, the pasuk says ve'habasa she'iga b'chol tamei, lo yachol. The meat which is eaten from any that which came in contact with any tama, lo yachol, you're not allowed to eat. But eish yisar, if you have to burn, ve'habasa kol Torah yachol basa. So the next basa in the pasuk says ve'habasa. So Rashi says, what is the drasha from the extra vav of this ve'habasar comes to teach me lerabos eso eitzim ulevona. Eitzim, the wood, ulevona, the spices that became tamei are also included. You're not allowed to go ahead and use them. So the Gemara asks, eitzim ulevona b'nei etmuyininu. Are eitzim ulevona possible to become tamei? They're not food. So why does the Torah include them? That in the word v'habasar to teach me that if they became tamei, you're not allowed to use them. They're not food. How can they become tamei? Ela maila. It must be that it's a maila by kachim that eitzim and levona that became tamei. You're not allowed to use. Hachanami maila. So too, just like over there by kachim, we found that there's a maila that you're not allowed to use those things. So too by basar, so too by our case of truma, there is a maila that even though you replanted it, and technically there should be no reason that a Kohen should not be able to eat it, the Torah tells us asurim, it's still asur to be eaten. New Mishnah. Elu dvarim she'adam yotze b'hen yidei chavasa b'Pesach. There's a mitzvah on Pesach to eat matzah the first night. What types of grain are you allowed to use for matzah? Elu dvarim, the following things, adam yotze b'hen yidei chavasa b'Pesach, a person is able to be mekayim his chiyuv of eating matzah on Pesach. B'chitim with wheat, b'se'orim with barley, b'kusman with spelt, b'shifon with rye, b'shibol Shmuel, or with oats. The 5 grains. V'yotzim b'demai. One could be yotze with demai. Demai is a grain which was owned by an Amaretz. An Amaretz was makbid to take off truma, because truma, if a person eats truma, there's misa. So the Amaretz is makbid to take off truma, but meiser, he's not makbid to take off. So therefore we have a suffix when one will get grain from a Amaretz, did he take off meiser or not? So if one has grain that was owned by an Amaretz, and he goes ahead and makes matzah from it, then he could be yotze with demai. He could be yotze with this grain. Demai comes from Lashon damai. Damai, what is this? We don't know what it is. Is there meiser in here? Means was the meiser not taken off? Or did the Amaretz take off the meiser? The Gemara is going to explain, most Amaratzim were makbid to take off meiser. We just don't know what he did. Ube meiser rishon shenit l'trumasai. Meiser rishon, that is 1/10 of your grain, which is given to the Levi, and the Levi has a mitzvah, has a chiyuv, to take off truma from his meiser. That's called trumas meiser. Ube meiser sheni. Meiser Sheni is also, I think it's also a tenth, which is supposed to be brought up to Yerushalayim to be eaten. Vehektish, something that's hektish. Sheniftu. Meiser Sheni, we know that if you had a lot of grain and you can't travel to Yerushalayim with all your stuff, you had the ability to be podeh, to redeem it on a coin. You took that coin up and brought it to Yerushalayim. You bought food with it. You ate it over there in Yerushalayim. But the Meiser Sheni, which was nifta, which was redeemed, or the hektish, which was redeemed, though that grain, you're able to go ahead and make matzah out of it and use it for Pesach. Kohanim, if they had grain from challah or truma, challah was one of the chiyuvim that we're mechuyev to give to the kohen. If he has challah or truma, then he can make his matzah from that and be yotze his mitzvah. Ava lo b'tevel, but one may not be yotze his mitzvah of matzah with tevel. Tevel is when you have that grain that already meruach was done. The proper actions were done in order to create in it a chiyuv to take off truma meiser, and you did not take off the proper tithes. You didn't take them off yet. So then you are not allowed to be yotze your mitzvah of matzah with that. V'lo b'meiser rishon. Not with meiser rishon shelo nitna trumasa, that the truma was not taken out of the meiser rishon. Again, trumas meiser was not taken. V'lo b'meiser sheni v'hektish shelo niftu, or with meiser sheni and hektish that were not redeemed. Chalos hatoda rikike nazir, the chalos that the Torah requires us to bring with the korban toda, urikike nazir, and the nazir, which when he brings his korban, he's mechuyev to bring also matzos. Asain la'atzmo, if a person made chalos toda urikike nazir for his own korbanos, ein yotze behen, you're not allowed to use those for Pesach. But asal limka b'shuk, but if a person has a bakery, a chalos toda bakery or a kikei nazir bakery, and they're made for public use, then yotzin b'hem, one could be yotzin with them for Pesach. Tana, kusmin min chitin. Kusmin, which is spelt, is a type of chitin. It's from the chitin family. It's from the wheat family. Rashi explains what is the nafkamina. If one is allowed to take truma from his kusmin on his chitin, since they're from the same family, you can go ahead and take it. Shibol eshul v'shifon. The oats or the rye, min sa'orim, those are from the barley family. Kusmin gulva, kusmin is gulva. If you look at Rashi quickly, Rashi tells you gulvi aspilta balaz, which is spelt. Shifon is dishra, shibola shul is shavili talo. And we're explaining what they are. So the Gemara says, hani in. Only these 5 grains, oriz v'dochen, lo. Rice or millet, lo, those grains, those you're not allowed to use. So the Gemara is manani mili. How do you know? Amar Reb Shimon Lakish v'chein toned be'Reb Shmuel. V'chein toned be'Reb Weissman Yaakov. Reb Shimon Lakish and also be'Reb Shmuel, also be'Reb Weissman Yaakov, all say, Amar Kra, we have a pasuk by Pesach. Lo sochel alav chametz, shivas yom tochel alav matzos. Do not eat on it chametz. 7 days you should eat matzah. So the Gemara makes a drasha. Devarim haboim lidei chimutz, adam yotzi bei v'hen yidei chavasam matzah. The pasuk compares, or the pasuk has both from the pasuk chametz and matzah. So the Gemara's drasha is devarim, things that come to chimutz, that will become chametz. Those things adam yotzi bei yidei chavasam matzah. Yotza elu. Ores and dochen are different. She'ein bon lidei chimutz. They cannot come to chimutz. They do not come to become chametz. Elo lidei sirchon. If one will make a dough out of this rice, it comes to sirchon, spoiled. It does smelly. Rashi says siruach. It doesn't come to chametz. It comes spoiled. So the Gemara must listen to like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. The Amar Ores min dagenhu. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that rice is a type of grain. V'chayavan al chimutz ekares, and one is mechuyev on its chimutz, which means one makes a dough out of rice. He's mechuyev kares. This anya, because we learned in a rice. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri oser ba'orez v'dochen when they shekarav l'achmetz. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri asered by orez v'dochen because it's karav l'achmetz. So the Gemara asks Iboilu. This lashon that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said that it's karav l'achmetz. What did he mean? Iboilu shekarav l'achmetz. Does that mean dekodim umachmetz, that it hastens to become chametz just like the other grains? O dilma Karev lahachmetz have, it's karev lahachmetz, close to become chametz, but chametz gomer lo have, but it really doesn't become chametz gomer. Tashma, the Sani we learned in the Beferish Abraisa. Amr Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Orez min daganhu, v'chayav al chimutz kares. Orez is a min dagan, and you're mechuyev on its chimutz kares. V'adam yotze b'yidei chavos Pesach, and not only that, a person can be yotze his chiyuv of eating matzah with it on Pesach. V'chein or Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said something else. Karamis chayeves b'chala. Karamis is one is mechuyev in chala. Chala is also a chiyuv. It's a type of a truma, something that's one of the matnos kahuna that you give to the kohen. Chala is after you make a dough, you give a portion of it to the kohen. But the Rashi brings down the drush of the Gemara, says in Maseches Menachos, that also it's learned out from the same thing. It's learned out from lechem, from lechem oni. So anything that's muchli that you can make matzah out of it, it can be included in lechem oni, is something that you mechuyev in chala. So the Gemara asks, my karamis. What's karamis? Amar Abaya shitznisa. Abaya says it's a shitznisa. That really helps. My shitznisa. What's shitznisa? Amar Rav Papa shitznisa the mishtagach beini klinisa. It's a type of a grain type. The mishtagcha that it's found beini klinisa amongst the poppy seeds. I think from Rashi, from the Mefarshim on the side, it sounds like it's something called kimmel. Kimmel is a type of it's a seed. A type of a seed that similar to a rice seed, it's black. So this is what the shitznisa is. Amar Rav bar Chana, Amar Reish Lakish. Rav bar Chana said the name of Reish Lakish. Isa shenilusha b'yayim v'shemen v'dvash. A dough which was kneaded with wine, oil, or honey. Ein chayavin al chimutze kares. One is not mechuyev on this dough, on its chimutz kares. One is not mechuyev kares. Yosef Rav Papa Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua. Rav Papa and Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua were sitting kamei der Rav Idi bar Oven. They were sitting in front of Idi bar Oven. The Yosef Rav Idi bar Oven would come in Amnim. Rav Idi bar Oven was sitting there and he was sleeping. He was dremeling. Amalei Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua Rav Papa. So Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua, that he was having a discussion with Rav Papa in front of Rav Idi bar Oven, who was sleeping. My time in the Reish Lakish. What's the reason of Reish Lakish, who says that if you're going to go ahead and knead this dough with wine, oil, or honey, it's not going to become chametz? Amar lei. So Rav Papa said, Amar Kro. The Torah tells us, Lo sochel alav chametz, shivas yam tochel alav matzos. Devarim she'adam yotze v'hen yidei chavasa b'matzah. The following things that you could be yotze your mitzvah with matzah, your chiyuv in matzah. On those things, chayavan al chimutz kares. Those things you can be mechuyev on its chimutz. If you let it sit, you mechuyev kares. V'ha, and this combination, since one cannot be yotze his chiyuv on matzah, the havile matzah ashira, and the Torah tells us you need lechem oni, and chayavan al chimutz kares. Therefore, one would not mechuyev on its chimutz when you let it sit. You're not mechuyev kares. So Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua had a shayla to Rav Papa. I don't understand the kasha. Let's say you have a regular lechem, a regular loaf of bread which was made from the 5 grains and it was made with water and you diluted it and you swallowed it. Im chametzu, if it's chametz, the halacha is anish kares. You get kares, even though it's diluted in water. If you can drink it, it's still chametz. Ve'imatzahu, ein adam yotzei yidei chavasa Pesach. And if it was matzah, you cannot be yotzei your chiyuv on Pesach. So he's asking on the equation. If the equation was over here, this equation's wrong. Over here, you were not able to be yotzei your chiyuv on matzah. V'chayav al chimutz kares. And you're chayav on your chimutz. If you let it sit and now you diluted it, you're chayav on the chimutz kares. So his question is, how can you tell me the reason that a dough which was mixed with wine, oil, or honey is no good? You're not chayav kares because you can't be yotzei mitzvah on Pesach when it's made out of matzah because it's matzah ashira. I just disproved your equation because if you have a regular loaf of bread and you diluted it in water and you're able to drink it, the halach is you're still chayav because it was a loaf of bread. But can you be yotzi your mitzvah matzah like that? No, you can't. So your equation's wrong. On something that you could be yotzi a mitzvah, you cannot be yotzi a mitzvah of matzah. You're still mechuyev kares. If that's the case, how can you answer my shaila about your loaf of bread which was kneaded together with wine, oil, and shemen, that the reason you can be chayiv, the reason you're not chayiv kares is because you can't be yotzi a mitzvah. The mitzvah, the equation's wrong. So Tarbu Ravadi Baravin. All of a sudden, Ravidi Baravin, he woke up after he heard this conversation. Avalu Dardiki, children, what are you saying? Hainu time of the Reish Lakish. That's not the reason of Reish Lakish. The reason of Reish Lakish is as follows: Mishum Dahavlu Me Peros. The reason that you're chayiv kares, the reason you're not chayiv kares is because it's Me Peros. Ume Peros and Machmitzah. And the halacha is Me Peros will not create chametz. Not to do. The reason isn't because it does it. It's because of the equation. The reason is because it's needed with meperos. And meperos are not machmetz. And that's why if you have your bread which was kneaded with wine, oil, or shemen, wine, oil, or dvash, or honey, the halacha is you're not chayev kares. Yotze b'demai u'mais. The Mishnah continues. One of the things that you could be yotze with, if your matzah was kneaded with grain, which was made from demai or meiser, you could be yotzi your mitzvah of matzah. So the Gemara asks demai. On demai, haloi chazile. One's not allowed to eat demai. So how could it be yotzi's mitzvah? With demai, Rashi gives us two reasons why. If you look at Rashi, v'amir lekamon, mish isuri mishum bal tochel chametz levado, ati yotze bal l'shum matzah. Only the Gemara brings the drush at the end of the page that the only time you could be yotze with a matzah is only mishi isurei mishum bal tochel chametz levado, when the isser on this loaf of bread was only that you're not allowed to eat chametz, to make sure that this is not chametz. Ata yotzeba. On that you could be yotze your mitzvah of matzah. On that you could be yotze your mitzvah of matzah. Yotze mishi yeshlo iser acher, coming to exclude that if there is another iser intertwined in this loaf of bread, why I would not be able to eat it. For example, demai. On that matzah, I would not be yotze my mitzvah. The only thing I could be yotze my mitzvah on is only on something where the only iser that would be involved would be chametz, and it's not chametz, it's matzah. On that I could be yotze my mitzvah. If there's going to be another iser intertwined over here, for example, demai, we're going to see later, the other type of isurim, so then that type of matzah I'm not allowed to be yotze with. Inami, another reason why I would not be able to be yotze the mitzvah of matzah which was made from demai, because havile mitzvah b'avera. It's a mitzvah that's coming through an avera. You're not allowed to eat the mai. If that's the case, so then how can I yotze my mitzvah with it? So the fact the Gemara, haloi chazile, it's not fitting to eat. If the Gemara answers, kiva di boy mafker l'nichse, havi oni va'ochel demai hashtanami chazile. Since if one would be mafker his nechasim, he'd nullify all his nechas, mafker it, and therefore he's a poor man. And if he's an ani is allowed to eat the mai. Va'ochel demai hashtanami chazile. So now, even though he wasn't mafker his nechasim, so he's a wealthy man, but since he has the ability to be mafker his nechasim, which would make him a poor man, right now he has the ability to eat this demai, this nan. How do you know a poor man is allowed to eat demai? This nan we learned in the Mishnah. Ma'achilin eso aniyim demai ve'es achsanya demai. One is allowed to feed the aniyim, the poor people, demai. Ve'es achsanya demai. The achsanya were the Jewish soldiers that came through your town. They were fighting in the army. And it was incumbent upon the people in the town to feed the army men. It was their job. And therefore, the Torah allowed us to feed them from demai. You don't have to necessarily lose your own money. We allowed them, we were makel, we were more lenient to feed them demai. If that's the case, we learned in the Mishnah that we can feed aniyim, poor people, demai. Beis Shammai says, you're not allowed to feed us aniyim demai v'sachsanya demai. Beis Hillel says you can be meichel, you can allow to feed the aniyim and the achsanya demai. If that's the case, since I'm allowed to feed them demai, our Mishnah tells us that I'm allowed to use demai for matzah because since I have the ability to be mafker my nechasim and I will be an ani, so therefore I can go ahead and be yotzi my mitzvah with demai. The next case was Meiser Rishon Shenatla Trumasa. Meiser Rishon, which your Truma was taken off of it, which means everything was done correctly. Meiser Rishon is given to the Levi. The Levi's required to take off a tenth of his Meiser Rishon and give it to the Kohen. So once the Levi took off his tenth and gave it to the Kohen, I could be Yotze my mitzvah with this Meiser Rishon. So the Gemara asks the obvious question: Pshita, what's wrong with it? The kivan shenad l'trumasei. Once truma was taken off of it, chulin have. It's chulin. So why would I not be able to go ahead and use it? The Gemara answers like tzricha shehekedimu b'shibal. This Levi was a smart man, and he knew that if he's going to wait till the owner gives off truma from his grain, his portion he's going to get is less. Because the Torah requires us to first give off truma, then give off meiser. So if truma was given off from the bundle, so then there's a portion that's missing already. And now when the owner of the bundle is going to give off a tenth to the Levi, he's going to get, his tenth is going to be less. Therefore, what did he do? He was hikdimu b'shibala. Before it even was mechuyev in truma, he went ahead and chapped the meiser. He went ahead and went to grab the meiser. This way he'll get even a bigger portion. So he took the meiser out of the kri, out of the bundle, out of the pile, before the chiv of truma even started. He was hikdimu b'shibalim. He was makdim. He proceeded before it even was mechuyev in truma, and therefore he took off his tenth. He took meiser on that. V'not lahimenu trumas meiser. So he got his portion before truma was ever taken off, and now he took off truma from that. So the question is that really the entire kri, the entire pile, was mechuyev in truma. So technically, you could look at it that his meiser that he took has really some truma in there. Some of it really belongs to the Kohen because of truma. Some of it belongs to the Kohen because of trumas meiser. That part he took, that part he gave. But what about the part that really was supposed to be given off before he took off his meiser, which is the truma, which is really this maybe a little piece which was left in his portion? So would he be mechuyev to give another portion to the Kohen besides his trumas meiser? Does he have to go ahead and take off truma, which would have been taken off originally from the original kri?
So Levi getting that truma, is he getting the produce before it's all smoothed out, or was it already? So
that's Shekedimu b'shibalim was he went ahead and preceded it before it was smoothed out, before the chiv of truma really.
So it's really a
right.
But not the right thing to do.
Right, exactly. He did the wrong thing because one is supposed to go in a chronological order: first truma, then meiser. So he was hikdimu. He preceded the act, and he chapped, he grabbed before it was even mechuyev.
So where's the trumas meiser?
So the trumas meiser that he's allowed to do. That's his portion.
If everything hasn't been smoothed out yet, or how that pile hasn't been finished, why is there a chiyuv for trumas meiser?
Trumas meiser is a chiyuv on the Levi. Nothing to do with the pile.
So no matter what he has,
from his meiser he has to give truma on that. The question is that now that the pile was smoothed out, therefore it's going to be mechuyev in truma. So he really has a little piece of truma in his meiser too, besides the piece that he has to give to the Kohen as trumas meiser.
It's never chayav in truma.
Oh, so that's exactly what the Gemara is going to discuss. So he was hikdimu b'shibalim. He was makdim. He preceded b'shibalim. Shibalim really means while it was in its stalks, its bundles, before it was smoothed out. V'not lahimenu trumas meiser, and he took on that trumas meiser. V'lo not lahimenu truma gedola. But truma gedola means the first truma, the original truma, that was not taken. So the Gemara is answering, we're going like Uchader Bavo. We're going to hold like Rabavo. Who's Ravo? Damar Rabavo, Amr Shimon Lakish. Ma'aser Rishon shekdimu b'shibalim. Ma'aser Rishon, which was hikdimu, was preceded b'shibalim. Potter mitruma gadola. It's potter from truma gadola, which means this that meiser that the Levi will have, the trumas meiser will have to give off. But the Truma Gedola, he's pater from. How do I know? Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk. This is a pasuk by the Levi, where he has to give his Trumas Meiser. Varimose mimenu, the Levi should take Trumas Hashem, Meiser min ha-Meiser. He has to take off Truma to Hashem, Meiser min ha-Meiser. From the Meiser that he has to take off Meiser from that, another tenth, and give that to the Kohen, which is going to be called Trumas Meiser. So the Gemara makes a drasha. Meiser min ha-Meiser amarti lecha, v'lo Truma Gedola v'Trumas Meiser min ha-Meiser. I required you to take Trumas Meiser, but not Truma Gedola and Trumas Meiser from this portion. So therefore, there's a specific Gzeres HaKosov which allowed the Levi to bypass the Truma Gedola, because the Chiyuvim of the Levi was only Trumas Meiser and not Truma Gedola. If that's the case, that was the Chiddush of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah comes along and tells us that Trumas Meiser, that Meiser, Shenitla Trumasa, Meiser Rishon, that the Truma was taken off of that. You can go ahead and be Yotzir Mitzvah of Matzah for. The Gemara asked, that's Pasha. It's simple. Why do I need a Mishnah to tell me that? So the Gemara says the Chiddush of our Mishnah was that he went ahead and took off Trumas Meiser, but the Truma Gedola was never taken off. And still, since the Torah allows me to eat it without taking off Truma Gedola, that was the Chiddush, like we're going with Ravavo, that you do not have to take off the Truma Gedola, because the only Chiyuvim to take off out of this Meiser was only Trumas Meiser.
And if the Levi went and got this after it was smooth, though, this would be Tevel, right?
That's the next case. Amalei Rav Papa Abayo. So Rav Papa says to Abayo, Elamayata. Afilu hekdimim b'kri nami lifter. If the Torah went ahead and allowed the Levi not to take off Truma Gedola, so then why did it have to be only when it was hekdimu b'shibalim, when he preceded the process before it was smoothed out? Then even if it was hekdimu b'kri, if he grabbed, once it was a kri, once it was a bundle, so it was mechuyev in truma, and now the Levi chapped his part, he grabbed his portion, so let him go ahead and be pater also, because the Torah tells us varimos lechem truma meiser and ha-meiser. The only chiyuv that the Levi is mechuyev is trumas not meiser and not truma gedola, so let him be pater from that too. I have a pasuk. Amar lei olech amar kro. I have another pasuk. Mikol matnos eichem torimu as kol trumas Hashem. From all your matanos, from all your presents, tarimu as kol truma Hashem, to include, you have to give off truma on everything. So the Gemara asks, Yahweh's question, Umaros. How did we know? So we have two conflicting psukim over here. One pasuk tells us that the Levi is only mechuyev to give off trumas meiser, not truma gedola. Another pasuk tells us that he has to give off truma from all his matanos, which would mean even truma gedola. So how did I know to apply the pasuk that allows the Levi to be excluded from truma gedola from when he took it off by hekdimu b'shibalim in an earlier stage, and the other pasuk that tells me that he's mechuyev to take off truma gedola when he grabbed his meiser at a later stage? How do I know? Umarois.
Don't we say that the owner of the grain should just make up? In other words, he had so much grain, he was mechuyev to give a bushel for truma. Now the lady came, he took some off, so it's less than a bushel theoretically, but the owner still had that responsibility. So maybe we have to say the owner should give the truma.
Correct.
Because otherwise, the Kohen is losing out.
You're right. Correct. But the way we look at it, is once the meiser was taken out, then I don't look at it that the truma could be taken on something that's not in the pile anymore. Everything has to be here.
Well, for example, if I come to a pile and I take some out, not Levi, I just take a share off of the thing, knowing full well that the owner is inside truma. What difference does it make?
Because you're telling me the Kohen gets his correct amount anyway.
The Kohen should get his correct amount no matter what.
Well, then the Balabas is going to lose.
He's a Kohen, he doesn't care.
We gotta stick up for our time.
Okay. Umarois, so the Gemara asks, how did you know how to apply the psukim? So the Gemara answers, Hi idgin, v'hai lo idgin. Once it was put into a kri, it's called dagon. It's called, now it has a shame dagon. Reishis de Guncha. Once it became grain, then once it had the shame of Dagon, that's when we will apply the pasuk of Mikomat Nosechem Truma. So before it had the name of Dagon, before it had the name of Dagon, when it was B'Shibalim, so that's when, since it's not called Reishis de Guncha, and therefore we can go ahead and say that he would not be mechuyev in Truma Gedola yet. Once it has the name of Dagon, so then we have to apply the pasuk that you cannot go ahead and get around the Truma Gedola, even though Levi is going to have to give the Truma Gedola.
The Shibolim sounds to me like it's still
Right.
in the straw, that it's not
That's
been
what it,
taken
right,
out.
so- right. Okay, let's go on. Meiser Sheni v'hekdish sheniftu. Meiser Sheni, and hekdish that you redeemed. So the Gemara is obvious. Pshita, it's obvious. If you redeemed it, so then why shouldn't I not be able to use it for the mitzvah? So the Gemara answers, Hacha b'mayos skinon shenosan es hakeren v'lo nosan es hachomesh. The Torah requires that I'm going to redeem my Meiser Sheni and my hekdish. Not only do I have to redeem it for a keren, but I have to add a chomesh too, a fifth. And we were talking about where we redeemed it on a keren, on the original price. The keren is the true value. For lo nosan as a chomesh, I didn't give a chomesh yet. But kamash malon de'ein chomesh ma'akev. I might think that since the Torah requires me to take not only a keren, not only the original value, but to add a chomesh too. So I might think if I didn't separate the chomesh yet, if I wasn't put to the chomesh yet, maybe I'm not allowed to use the grain yet. The chiddush of the Mishnah is that even though I didn't separate the chomesh, the grain is still out of its state of hektish and meiser, and I can now go ahead, mutter to be used for a Pesach. V'kohanim b'chala u'b'truma. Kohanim, they are allowed to make matzah for Pesach out of their challah and truma. So the Gemara asks Pshita. It's obvious. Why shouldn't he be able to? He's allowed to use it. He's allowed to eat it. So why shouldn't he be able to use his matzah? Mao duteim, I might think matzah shavel chalada. When the Torah tells me that he has to bring that a person has a chiyuv of matzah, I might think matzah that's shavel chalada, matzah that's able to be eaten by every single person. Matzah shavel chalada be eaten. I need matzah that can be able to be eaten by everybody. Kamash malon matzahs riba. It says matzahs many times in the Torah to include that even though it's not shavel cha'adam, he's able to use it. Avalo b'tevel. If one has tevel, which we said was before the truma and the meiser were taken off, on that you're not allowed to be yotzi your mitzvah. Whereas pshita, that's obvious. You're not allowed to eat it. Lo tzricha b'tevel tovul midrabanan. It's talking about tevel, which was not a chiyuv of tevel midaoraisa, that you only had a chiv to take off truma meiser midrabanan, which means its state of tevel was only tavel midrabanan. What type of case was that? Shezara ba'atzis she'ina nakar. You planted this grain in a flower pot which did not have a hole in it. Therefore, its yinika, its sustenance, was not really coming from the ground. It wasn't getting yinika, it wasn't getting sustenance from the ground, and therefore it really is not mechuyev in truma meiser. The Rabbanan made a gzeira in order that you shouldn't come to think that some things don't have truma meiser. They said that everything you have to take off truma meiser on everything. Therefore, it's really not tevel midoraisa. It's only tevel midrabanan. But the Torah was makbid even on tevel midrabanan. You're not allowed to go ahead and use it for Pesach. V'lo b'meiser rishon shelo not l'trumasa. You're not meiser rishon that truma meiser was not taken off of it. I'm sorry, that truma was not taken off of it. So the Gemara answers pshita. Obviously not allowed to use it. Lo tzricha shegedimu bekri. I went ahead and I took it off in a state of the kri, which was the later stage. Mao de tema, I might think kida amar le Rav Papa Abaya. I might think that maybe like what Rav Papa said to Abaya before, which means we had two conflicting psukim. If that's the case, Rav Papa asked Abaya before, why did you tell me that the Levi does not have to take off Truma Gedola from his Meiser? Only in a case. Whereas a Kedim V'Shibalim, if the Torah allows the Levi to bypass the Truma Gedola, so even when it's Yukdima Bakri. So I might think you can go ahead and get around that too. Kamash Malon Kedishani Le. The Chiddush is the way the Gemara answered that I have another pasuk to tell me that the Levi has to give Meiser. One is talking about Ekdima Bakri, that then he's Mechuyev to give Truma. One is talking about Ekdima Mishibalan, that he doesn't have to give Truma. V'lo Meiser Sheni v'Hekdish Shalom Niftu, and not Meiser Sheni and Hekdish that were not redeemed. So the Gemara asks Pshita, it's Pashing now to use that for matzah. So the Gemara answers V'lo Niftu. Really, it was Niftu. Umay Umaylo niftu. What does it mean, shalo niftu? Shalo niftu kil chasam. It wasn't redeemed correctly. Ma'aser sheni shepadu agabi asimon. Drachmanam v'tzarta kesef. Ma'aser sheni, which was nifta, which was redeemed on an asimon, which is no good, because the Torah tells me v'tzarta hakesef that you have to use a money that has a tzura, an imprint on it, right? And asimon had nothing on it, so therefore it wasn't good. Davar sheyesh lo tzura, the hektish. And hektish shechilu agabe karka. Hektish that I redeemed it on karka. The Torah tells v'nasan kesef akamlo. It has to be redeemed on kesef as opposed to karka. Tana Rabbana. The Rabbana learned. Yochel, I might think yotza adam yidei chavas b'teva shlo niskan. I might think a person can go ahead and be yotza his chiyuv of matzah with tevel, which was not niskan, which was not correct. It was not taken off. So the Gemara is called tevel nami halo niskan. All tevel, that's what tevel is, not niskan. It's not corrected. So why would I think that? So the Gemara says, "But tevel shlo niskan called tzarchai." I might think a person may be able to be yotze his mitzvah with tevel that it wasn't completely tied, it wasn't completely taken off all the chiyuvim. How is that talking about? Shenot l'mena truma gedola. Truma gedola was taken off, but v'lo not l'mena truma meiser or meiser rishon, v'lo meiser sheni, afilu meiser ani. Minayin. How do I know I cannot be mitzvah with that? Talmud Lomar lo sochel of chametz mishi isur mishum bal tochel of chametz. Someone lo sochel of chametz. The Torah tells me you're not allowed to eat on it chametz. Mishi isuro, the isur on this loaf of bread is mishum bal tochel of chametz. Is that the loaf of bread's isur is make sure that it doesn't become chametz. Yotzazeh, excluding this loaf of bread, she'ein isur mishum bal tochel chametz. The Isser isn't only about Bal Tochel Chametz, El Mishum Bal Tochel Tevel. There is another Isser intertwined over here, do not eat Tevel. If that's the case, on that loaf of bread, you cannot be Yotzi your mitzvah on. So the Gemara asks, Yisur the Chametz Leichan Ozla. Where did the Isser of Chametz go? If you read back to the Brisa, Lo Sochel of Chametz, Mishi Yisur Mishum Bal Tochel of Chametz, Yotzazeh She'ein Yisur Mishum Bal Tochel Chametz. The Isser over here is not because of Bal Tochel Chametz, El Mishum Bal Tochel Tevel. The only Isser that's over here on this loaf of bread is Bal Tochel Tevel, do not eat Tevel. But Bal Tochel Chametz, where did that go? Reb Sheshes Haman Reb Shimon Hidamer in Isser Chalal Isser. We'll continue tomorrow.
Is butter considered Tavel until Trumas Meiser is also taken?
Yeah.
But that chiyuv
Is not on.
And how does the Baal even know when it's taken?